Chapter 27 of The Autobiography of a Newspaper Girl by Elizabeth L. Banks. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 27 About My Enemies and the Meanest Man I Ever Met. When I started out to write my memoirs, I took for my motto the advice which Mrs. Lynn Linton gave me a few years ago on the occasion of my eventful interview with her. Guard against bitterness and cynicism. Have faith and hope and charity, especially charity. It has been my desire, in the main, to tell of pleasant happenings in my career, of kindnesses done to me, of helping hands held out, of struggles with difficulties finally overcome, of silver linings discovered to my clouds. It was only the other day that, on my remarking that I had nearly finished the writing of my autobiography, one of my editors said to me, "Ah, now I suppose we must look out for squalls. I suppose in this book you have written up all your enemies and are going to pay off old scores." "On the contrary," I replied, "I have been writing up my friends and letting my enemies alone. I love my friends and despise my enemies, and I wouldn't give the latter the satisfaction of thinking that they or their doings were important enough to be put into a book." I am just wondering now whether, having gone on this principle, and said little or nothing about people who have done me mean turns during my journalistic career, I may not have given my readers the impression that I have only been brought into contact with good-natured, kind, amiable persons who have done their best to make things pleasant for me, that I have not known what it was to be harassed about with foes who talked about me, tried to pull me down when I have been trying to climb, laid snares and traps for me, and done their best to compass my downfall. It may be thought that, in short, I can always truthfully be singing, "Oh, everybody's awfully good to me." But this is entirely a misconception. Why, during my career at earning a livelihood, it has sometimes seemed to me that I have met more disagreeable, mean, wicked, and positively vicious people, to the square mile, than anybody else could possibly have met. The mean turns they have done me, and tried to do me, are without number. Enemies? Of course I have had, and probably still have, more of them than I could shake a stick at. But I do not consider it my business to go about chastising them. I let them chastise themselves, which I have noticed they generally seem bound to do in the end, and then I triumphantly exclaim with David, "He (or she) made a pit and digged it, and has fallen into the ditch which he (or she) made." This much, or rather this little, about my enemies. And now I will tell the story of the meanest man I ever met. I am sorry to say that the meanest man I ever met was an American, though I hasten to add that he was the meanest man not because, but in spite of his nationality. It is about 10 years since I made his acquaintance, and it happened in this wise. Just before I came to London, I was, as I have related in one of the earlier chapters of this book, employed as society editor on a prominent paper in one of our southern towns, and one day, wishing to take a run over to New York, I said to the colonel, the managing editor, "I want to go to New York. May I use the pass-book?" "Certainly," he replied, "but it will not pass you beyond Philadelphia, which is only halfway. You can go there and back on it, but from there to New York and from New York back again to Philadelphia you will have to pay." Inside the pass-book the managing editor slipped a little note which read, "To the conductor, this certifies that Miss Elizabeth Banks is society editor of this paper, and is entitled to use this pass-book between Philadelphia and this city either way." Now, if I had gone to New York contented with that, all would have been well with me. But, having got that help which stood for the remittance of half my railway fare, I determined, after the manner of Oliver Twist, to ask for more. So I wired on to a friendly politician in New York, saying, "Please send pass both ways, New York, Philadelphia." I felt sure I would get that pass, for I had once given that gentleman a write-up, and he had overwhelmed me with thanks, and had told me that whenever I wanted to travel on a particular railroad, I was to inform him so that he could send me a pass. The next morning came a letter from him. "I am only too glad to do this little service for you," he wrote. "I enclose the pass, which you will see is made out for my daughter, as I am not supposed to get passes for anybody except myself and the members of my own family. That, however, is all right. My daughter is about your age, and you can travel as my daughter." When I started on that journey, I used my passbook to Philadelphia. There, though I remained on the same train, a new conductor took charge because the train traveled to New York by a different road. I handed him my other pass, a paper on which was written, "Pass Miss Blankety Blank, New York to Philadelphia and return." That conductor took the paper, tore it along the perforated line, handed me back a part of it, and I put it in my purse for the return journey. On the last day of my stay in New York, I went shopping, and spent all the money I had except about $3. I saved that amount to pay my parlor car fee, for which no pass could ever be secured, and a late dinner on the train. The thought of arriving home penniless did not trouble me, for my week's salary would be due and waiting for me at the cashier's desk when I got back. "Ticket, please," said the conductor, when I was seated in the train for the return journey. "Pass," I said mechanically, handing him the slip of paper which the conductor on the outgoing journey had returned to me when he took up my pass. "This is no pass. It's a coupon torn off a pass," said the conductor when he had examined it. I was astonished, but as soon as he handed it back to me for examination, I saw that he spoke the truth. It was just such a voucher as one leaves in a checkbook after tearing out a check. It had on it a number and the duplicate words, "Pass Miss Blankety Blank, New York to Philadelphia and return," but no signature, no official stamp. I saw what had happened. My pass had said, "New York to Philadelphia and return," when it should have been made out the other way, "Philadelphia to New York and return." In going to New York, the conductor had taken it for granted that I was returning there from Philadelphia, had kept my pass and given me back the voucher, which was nothing but a receipt for it. I explained all this to the conductor on the homeward journey. "That may be true," he answered, "but that does not alter the fact that you will have to pay me the fare from New York to Philadelphia." Pay the fare! Great heavens! I had only 90 cents, for I had already paid for my Pullman seat and for my dinner. "I can't pay the fare," I answered. "I haven't got it." "Then I'll have to put you off the train at the next depot." Now, the next depot was little more than a log cabin in the wilderness. A pretty plight, indeed, for me to be turned off there at night, and in the thunderstorm which was raging. If I could only get to Philadelphia, I knew I would be safe, for a new conductor would be on the train. I would give him my proper newspaper passbook, and I would be myself again. This, however, I could not admit to the present conductor, for to do so would be to confess that I had been traveling to Philadelphia under false pretenses. The trouble this would cause me would be slight compared with what would ensue for my friend, Senator Blankety Blank, who had given me a pass made out for his daughter. "I wish you would let me go on to Philadelphia," I said persuasively to the conductor. "I have friends there with whom I could stop overnight while I telegraphed home for money." "Can't do that," he replied, "but I'll tell you what I can do. I will telegraph to your father if you will give me his address." My father! It suddenly occurred to me that the conductor was referring to the eminent Senator Blankety Blank. "He's not in New York," I answered. "He is on the road to Chicago, so you could not reach him. Let me think a minute. Let me think." "You'll have just 20 minutes to think in, Miss Blank," replied the conductor sneeringly, "and then off the train at the next depot you go." "You seem to be in trouble. Can I assist you in any way?" I heard a voice saying as the conductor moved down the corridor. I knew it must be the voice of the man who sat in the chair opposite me, for we two were the only occupants of the car. My heart leaped for joy as I looked into his face. Here was my deliverer! I would give him my card and tell him my story, and he would laugh after the manner of a gallant American knight rescuing an American maiden in distress. I liked his face. It seemed kind and benevolent, though in his dress and manner he looked a veritable man of the world. "Have you heard the conversation between me and the conductor?" I asked. "Yes," he answered. "You can render me great assistance," I returned. "But, if I accept it, I must take you into my confidence, and tell you the whole truth, which I dare not tell the conductor. May I confide in you?" "Most certainly you may," he replied. Thereupon I told him everything, how I was not Miss Blankety Blank at all, but only myself. I gave him my proper card, and showed him my newspaper passbook and my editor's letter of identification. "Have you no money at all?" he asked. 90 cents, I said, laughing. "The fare to Philadelphia is $2.85, is it not?" he asked. "And I take it you would like to borrow $1.95? I answered that this was the fact, though I wondered how I was to get home from the station when I arrived at the end of my journey. "Very well, I am able to make you this loan, of which you seem to stand greatly in need. But you are a stranger to me, and how do I know I shall ever get it back again? A few minutes ago you were passing yourself off as the daughter of Senator Blank. Now you show me papers that would go to prove you to be some other person. How do I know you are that person either, instead of an adventuress trying to get a railway journey for nothing?" He looked serious enough, but I judged he was one of our dry American humorists, and I laughed. There was, however, no answering laugh, and I was puzzled. "I will lend you the $1.95 if you can give me collateral, something of equal value, which I can keep in case you cheat me." "I cheat you!" I exclaimed angrily. "Have I not shown you a letter testifying that I hold a responsible position on a prominent paper? My salary awaits me in the office, and you will receive your $1.95 tomorrow by registered letter." "Excuse me, but as I said before, you have been traveling in a dishonest manner, and I am not willing to trust you without collateral. I notice that you have a ring on your finger. I am willing to take that as collateral, and give you a receipt for it. It will, I presume, cover the amount of your indebtedness to me." My ring worth $1.95! My ring, with its diamonds surrounding a turquoise! Dared I pawn it for my fare to Philadelphia? "You say you do not know, but I am intending to cheat you," I said. "May I remind you that this ring is worth a goodly sum of money, and ask how I am to know you are not a highwayman trying to rob me?" "Here is my card," he replied, handing me a pasteboard. "I am quite indifferent as to whether you accept my offer or refuse it. If you do not accept it, you will be put off at the next depot, and if you do accept, it must be on the terms I have mentioned. I never lend money to anyone without security." My brain was in a whirl, and I was getting frightened. "I accept your offer," I answered. "Please give me a receipt for it, and the money to pay my fare. I will send you the money as soon as I arrive home, and I suppose I shall have my ring back at once." "Certainly," he replied, handing me a pencil-written receipt and the money. Then I paid the conductor. At Philadelphia the man with my ring got out. The old conductor also left the train, and to the new one I gave my passbook, which took me on. From the station to the office I walked through the pouring rain, and found the editors and reporters still at work. To them I told the story of my return trip, and how I had pawned my ring for $1.95 to a man of whom I had never before heard. a man who had given me in return a pencil receipt written on the back of a card, which gave a name and an address in Philadelphia. At first my confrères laughed, but suddenly they grew serious. They supplied me with the money that was needed, but declared that I had better keep it, for I had no doubt been made the victim of a swindler. We got the money off to Philadelphia that morning, and I waited 2 days for my ring. The ring I valued, not because of its monetary worth, but because of its associations, and when the second day passed I became a fit subject for a lunatic asylum. On the third day I sent 4 telegrams after it, and numerous members of the staff offered to go to Philadelphia to try to trace it and the swindler. But when they considered that it must become publicly known that I had traveled as somebody else, and that the eminent politician must be placed in a predicament, that plan was abandoned. On the morning of the 4th day my ring arrived, and with it a letter, which read as follows: Madame, the heading of the paper on which I write will show you the responsible position I hold as superintendent of the Sunday School, and a worker among the poor and the erring ones of this great town, as well as the business firm of which I am the head. The principle which governs all my actions is that of trying to do good and teach lessons of righteousness. I took your ring, and have kept you waiting thus long for it, in order to give you a lifelong lesson never to travel under false pretenses again. I knew who you were from the moment I saw you, even before you had your trouble with the conductor, having seen you at a reception in your city, and had you pointed out to me by a friend. I knew, of course, you would send me back the money you borrowed, but I took your ring to make you worry, and so punish you for the sin you committed by traveling with a pass made out for another person. I hope the lesson will not be without good results, and an effect on your future life and career. Yours very truly, . I could, if I would, give the name of a man well known in the city of Philadelphia as the writer of the above letter, but I am not too cruel, and I content myself by putting him in this book as the meanest man I ever met. Chapter 28